Hello everyone, I'm here to tell you some scary stories, but in a way that helps you relax and fall asleep. If you enjoy these videos, don't forget to like and subscribe, it really helps a lot. Also, tell me in the comments where are you watching from and what time is it right now. Now take a deep breath, listen to the gentle sound of the rain, and let your mind drift into the dark, peaceful world of tonight's story. The Night Passenger. The road home. The road stretched endlessly through the dark, its faint yellow lines flickering beneath the dull rhythm of the headlights. It was close to midnight, and the world beyond the glass felt like a sealed void. No wind, no movement, just the hum of the tires and the low growl of the engine. I'd left the family reunion later than planned. Everyone had insisted I stay the night. Aunt Mary had even set up a cot in the spare room. But I told them I had work in the morning, deadlines, meetings. Truth was, I just wanted to be alone. Family gatherings always drained me. The laughter felt forced, the hugs too long, and the stories, and the same ones they told every year, just echoes of people I barely recognized anymore. So I took the long road home. 2 hours of nothing but trees, asphalt, and my own tired reflection in the windshield. At first it was fine. I had music playing, something low and ambient, just enough to fill the silence. The air smelled faintly of pine and wet earth, a clean, sharp scent that reminded me of when I was a kid, camping with my dad. But as the miles slid by, fatigue began to creep in, subtle at first, the kind that makes the world blur at the edges. I remember looking at the clock, 11:22. It felt important for some reason, maybe because I knew I wouldn't make it another hour like this. My eyelids were heavy, like sandbags pulling me under. Every few seconds I'd blink longer than I meant to, my mind drifting in and out of waking. The road was quiet, too quiet. Every few minutes a car would pass in the opposite lane, the headlights slicing through the dark before disappearing again, leaving me even more alone than before. There were no gas stations, no motels, no rest stops, just dense forest pressed up against both sides of the road, the trees so thick they seemed to lean toward me, closing in. The kind of road you see in bad dreams, familiar yet wrong. My body was screaming for rest, but there was nowhere to stop. No shoulder, no side road, nothing but miles of isolation. The thought of falling asleep while driving, even for a second, sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. I knew I needed to pull over, even if just for a few minutes. That's when I saw it, a break in the bushes. A narrow patch of grass barely visible in the headlights. It looked secluded, hidden, almost inviting in its darkness. I slowed down, pulling the car onto the shoulder and easing it behind a cluster of tall shrubs. The grass crackled beneath the tires. When I turned off the engine, the silence that followed was absolute. For a moment I just sat there, my hands still gripping the wheel, listening to the ticking of the cooling engine. The night outside was alive with faint sounds. Crickets, a distant owl, the rustle of leaves. The moon was hidden behind clouds, and without the headlights the forest became a single black mass. I checked the clock again. 11:22. I repeated it in my head like a marker in time, the moment I decided to rest. I leaned my seat back, trying to get comfortable. The air was cool through the cracked window. The kind of cool that numbs you just enough to drift. I thought I'd only close my eyes for 10 minutes, just enough to clear the haze. As the darkness pressed closer, I felt the car become a cocoon. The world outside ceased to exist. There was only the rhythmic sound of my own breathing, and the steady pulse of my heartbeat slowing down. Sleep came quickly, heavy and dreamless. I don't know how long I was out before I heard it. A faint scratching sound. It was subtle, so faint at first I thought I'd imagined it. Something brushing against the car door, a slow, uneven scrape. My eyes flicked open. The interior was dark, only the dim green glow of the clock lighting the dashboard. 11:50. The sound stopped. Silence. I waited, holding my breath, ears straining. Nothing, just the forest breathing outside. I was too tired to care. My body felt like it weighed 100 pounds. I told myself it was an animal. A raccoon maybe, or branches scraping against the door. The kind of thing your mind turns into monsters when you're half asleep. I closed my eyes again, and this time I dreamed. Not of anything specific, just movement. Shadows in the trees, something pacing in circles. A sound that was both close and impossibly far away. When I woke again, the world felt different, heavier. I checked the clock. 12:40, and then I heard it again. The scratching. Only this time it didn't stop. It was slower, more deliberate. Like fingernails dragging across metal, steady and patient. My chest tightened, the fog of sleep burning away in an instant. I held perfectly still, listening. Then came another sound, a just soft thud near the back of the car. Someone was moving around outside. I told myself not to look. If I didn't look, it wasn't real. But curiosity has a way of killing the last shred of comfort you have left. I turned my head slowly toward the rearview mirror. For a split second, just long enough for my brain to register it, I saw something move between the trees. A shape, low to the ground, too quick to identify, and then it was gone. Every instinct screamed at me to get out of there. I started the engine. The sound shattered the stillness like a gunshot. Headlights flared against the trees, revealing nothing but leaves and branches. I didn't wait. I shifted into drive and pulled back onto the road, the tires spinning slightly in the damp grass. My heart was pounding so hard it made my vision pulse. I didn't look back. The road curved ahead, a gentle bend to the left, and I slowed just enough to steady my breathing. That's when I saw it. Another car, parked on the side of the road. Driver's door open. I coasted closer, peering out the window. The interior was dark, empty. I almost stopped. Almost. Then I glanced at my rearview mirror. Nothing. For a heartbeat. Then, movement. A man came sprinting around the bend, his silhouette cutting across the headlights. He was screaming, Hey, you! Get out of the car, now!" His voice cracked in the night, raw and desperate. I didn't think. I didn't breathe. I pressed the accelerator, and the car leapt forward, the sound of gravel and fear filling the air. I didn't look back again. Not for the rest of the night. The highway unfurled before me like a river of dim light. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel. I don't remember breathing. Just the sound of tires chewing through the asphalt, the faint whine of the engine pushing harder than I wanted it to. I told myself I'd just keep driving. Keep moving until I saw lights. A gas station, a diner, a town, something. Anything that didn't look like the endless black forest, but the road had other plans. Mile after mile, there was nothing. No intersections, no houses, no signs. Just the trees. They grew taller the farther I went, bending toward the road like they were listening. Their branches reached over the asphalt, knitting together in the moonlight until the stars disappeared. At some point, I realized I'd slowed down without meaning to. The adrenaline that had fueled my escape was wearing off, leaving behind a heavy fog of exhaustion. My body began to betray me, my eyelids twitching, my neck muscles trembling from the strain of staying upright. I kept replaying what I'd seen. That man, the one screaming at me to get out of the car, the way he ran, full sprint, like someone who'd been chasing something for a long time. I told myself he was trying to help me, maybe. Maybe he'd seen something behind me. Maybe he wasn't the danger. Maybe he was running from it. But then why was his door open? Why was he alone on that road at midnight? And what was he running from? The questions circled my mind like vultures. I tried to push them away, but each time I blinked, I saw the flash of his face in the headlights, eyes wide, mouth twisted in something between terror and fury. Eventually, the world began to blur again. That edge between waking and sleep, the dangerous zone where thoughts and dreams merge. The road started to ripple under the headlights, the white lines bending and breathing. My reflection in the windshield looked wrong. The angle of the eyes, the slight tilt of the mouth. It wasn't me, not exactly. "Stay awake," I whispered. My voice sounded dry, cracked. I rolled down the window, hoping the cold air would help. The forest air was damp, filled with the scent of soil and rain. It did little to keep me conscious. Then, out of nowhere, a shape appeared on the side of the road. I hit the brakes. The tires screeched. The car fishtailed slightly before coming to a stop. For a second, my heart stopped too. It was just a deer, standing perfectly still on the shoulder, its head turned toward me. But its eyes, they caught the light in a way that didn't look right. The reflection was too strong, almost white-hot, like two small lanterns burning from within. We stared at each other. Then it stepped backward into the trees and vanished. I stayed there, shaking, my breath fogging up the windshield. The clock read 1:28. I'd been driving nearly an hour since I fled the spot, but something about that felt wrong. It hadn't felt like an hour. It had felt like minutes. I looked around trying to orient myself, but the road, the trees, even the smell of the air, it all felt the same. Like I hadn't gone anywhere. I turned the radio on, hoping for something human. The static that came through was deep and uneven, pulsing like a heartbeat. I turned the dial and nothing but white noise. Then faintly a voice broke through. "Don't stop." It was there for half a second, swallowed by static. I froze, hand on the dial. "Hello?" I said before realizing how stupid it was. "Who is this?" Silence. Then slowly the static faded. The radio went dead. That was when I noticed the fog. It rolled in like a slow tide, pale and dense, swallowing the forest on either side. Within seconds, the world beyond my headlights was gone. The light from the beams hit the fog and rebounded, blinding me with white. I could only see a few feet ahead. I pressed on, driving at a crawl. My pulse echoed in my ears, each thump syncing with the flick of the wipers. I wasn't sure if it was exhaustion or something else, but I began to hear it again, that same scratching sound, faint, rhythmic. Only this time, it wasn't outside. It was coming from the back seat. The sound was light, deliberate, like fingertips brushing against fabric. I didn't want to look. Every muscle in my neck screamed not to turn around. But I did. The back seat was empty, nothing. Just the outline of my jacket draped across the seat, shifting slightly with the car's motion. I exhaled. A sharp, trembling sound. "You're losing it," I whispered to myself. "You're just tired." And then the voice, soft, right behind my ear. "You should have stayed asleep." I slammed on the brakes. The car skidded sideways on the damp asphalt before stopping dead. I spun around at nothing. The back seat was empty. The fog outside was so thick now that it looked solid. I couldn't even see the trees anymore. My breathing came fast and uneven. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely hold the steering wheel. I tried the radio again, static. Then the clock. It still read 1:28, no seconds ticking forward. No movement. Just frozen. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. I turned the ignition, forcing the car to move. The engine growled, but the road ahead didn't change. The fog swallowed everything. The same stretch of pavement, the same faint curve looping endlessly. Minutes passed. Maybe hours, then in the distance I saw headlights. Another car. I nearly cried with relief. I flashed my brights, signaling, desperate to make contact. The other car slowed. I rolled down my window, waving, shouting something I can't even remember now. But as it came closer, something inside me froze. The car was identical to mine. Same make, same color, same dent on the front fender. As it passed, I caught a glimpse through its windshield. The driver was me, eyes wide, mouth open in a silent scream, and then darkness. The headlights blinked out. The fog thickened again. I don't remember pulling over. I don't remember falling asleep. But when I opened my eyes, the sky was faintly gray, and the first light of dawn filtered through the trees. My clock still said 1:28. When I woke again, it wasn't morning yet. It felt like morning, the kind of stillness that comes before dawn. But the sky outside the windshield was black. Not gray, not blue, but thick and absolute. For a moment, I wasn't sure if I was awake at all. The air in the car was stale and cold, and there was condensation on the inside of the windows. Faint hand-shaped patches where I must have brushed against the glass in my sleep. The clock on the dashboard glowed dimly. 1:28, still the exact same time. My heart gave a weak, uncertain kick. I wiped my hand across the glass and looked out at the forest. The fog was gone. The world beyond was visible again, but different. Too still, as if it had been painted there rather than grown. The trees looked wrong. Each trunk stood at a perfect angle, evenly spaced like soldiers at attention. No movement, no wind. Even the crickets had gone silent. Then I heard it again, the scratching. This time it was clear. Not faint, not from a dream. It was coming from outside, from the back left of the car near the trunk. Slow, deliberate, almost curious, I froze, every nerve alive. My body refused to move. I just sat there listening to that soft, steady sound. It came in short bursts, scratch, pause, scratch, pause, as if whatever was making it was testing something, tracing invisible lines on the metal. I leaned forward, peering into the side mirror. Nothing, the road was empty. The trees behind the car were silhouettes, their bark pale against the darkness, but I could feel it, That presence, close, waiting. I reached for my phone, needing light, a signal, anything. No service. Battery at 2%. A stupid panic took hold. I turned the key, starting the engine just to hear something human again. But the noise only made the silence heavier once it faded. Then a tap, right by the window. I flinched hard, jerking my head toward the sound. The glass fogged instantly from my breath, obscuring my view. But I could make out a faint impression, something pale and round, pressing against the glass, a handprint. For a second I thought it was my own reflection. But then it slid slowly downward, the fingertips leaving streaks through the condensation before fading away completely. I felt sick. I turned on the headlights. The beams cut through the dark and revealed nothing. No footprints, no person, no animal. Just the wet grass shining faintly in the light. But I wasn't imagining it. I knew I wasn't. The echo of that scraping was still ringing in my skull. I tried to laugh, but it came out as a broken sound. "It's fine," I muttered to no one. "Just the wind." Then over the idling of the engine I heard it again, from the roof this time, slow dragging movement. The sound of weight shifting above me, as if someone was crawling carefully, trying not to be heard. I sat perfectly still, eyes on the ceiling. My breath came in shallow gasps. The sound moved from the front of the roof toward the back. Then silence. I didn't know what to do. If I got out, I'd expose myself. If I stayed, I was trapped. A voice in my head whispered, "You're dreaming." "You're still dreaming." But the cold sweat on my neck told me otherwise. Finally, I reached down and switched off the engine again. The hum faded. The silence returned. And that's when I heard something I hadn't expected, breathing not mine, a slow, steady inhale, followed by a faint exhale coming from just beyond the driver's window. I couldn't move, couldn't think. My entire body was focused on the sound. Each breath matched to mine, but just slightly out of sync. Then, a whisper. "Open the door," I screamed without meaning to. My hand slammed the lock button again and again, even though it was already locked. My pulse thundered in my ears. I forced myself to look. There was nothing outside the window, but the fog was back, thin this time, rising off the grass like steam. Shapes flickered in it, shadows that weren't quite there. Hints of movement that dissolved when I tried to focus on them. And then I saw it. A figure standing at the edge of the light. Too far to make out clearly, but unmistakably human. Still. Facing me, I turned the headlights up to full beam. The light hit the figure and splintered, as if passing through smoke, and then it was gone. The sound of the scratching stopped. The breathing stopped. I sat there for a long time, hands trembling, staring at the place where it had been. The clock finally blinked. 1:29, just 1 minute had passed. The relief that should have brought me didn't come. Instead, I felt something worse, a cold, crawling certainty that whatever had been out there wasn't gone. It had simply decided to wait. When dawn finally came, I didn't remember falling asleep. The sunlight through the windshield felt wrong, too white, too bright. My eyes ached. The forest around me was quiet again. Birds chirped in the distance as if nothing had happened. I stepped out of the car for the first time since the night began. My legs were weak, unsteady. The air was fresh, but beneath it was another scent, faint metallic. I walked to the back of the car, and there on the trunk were marks, long, shallow grooves etched into the paint. 4 lines evenly spaced, each ending in a sharp curve, like something with hands, or claws, had dragged them slowly, almost lovingly, across the metal. I touched them. The edges were still cold, damp, as if they'd been made moments ago. That's when I noticed something else just above the scratches. Written faintly in the layer of dirt and dew were words traced by a finger. "You stopped again." As the trees along the edge of the road seemed wrong. Not just the usual looming shadows, but they leaned in at unnatural angles, trunks bent as if pressing toward the asphalt. Every few seconds, a branch would scrape against another, producing a faint, dry rapping sound. I told myself it was the wind, though there wasn't any. Then I saw it at first. It was a blur, like a shadow passing behind the trunks. Then, unmistakably, a figure stepped forward into the pale light. It was tall, thin, but not fully visible, obscured by the branches. I squinted, trying to make sense of it. It wasn't moving like a human should. Its posture was slightly off, the head tilted unnaturally. the limbs too long and loose. I froze, hand gripping the wheel so tightly, and I blinked. I kept driving faster this time. My pulse raced, but the forest didn't thin. The road twisted through the trees like a tunnel, and every time I thought I could see a clearing ahead, it curved again. Then I heard it, not from outside, but inside the car, a faint scratching at the roof, slow and deliberate. I slammed my hands on the steering wheel. "No," I muttered. "Not again. It's not real. It can't be real." The scratching continued, moving from front to back, faint but persistent. My eyes darted to the rearview mirror. Empty. Then I noticed movement in the corner of my vision, a shadow flitting just beyond the line of the headlights. I swerved slightly and it disappeared. My mind screamed for logic. A raccoon? A branch? Fatigue? But deep down, I knew this wasn't imagination. Something was out there. Something was watching. I forced myself to calm down. I needed a plan, any plan. I considered calling someone, my boss, a friend, anyone, but the signal was still gone. My phone offered no help. Then I realized the road had grown strangely silent. The birds were gone, the distant hum of insects had vanished. Even the crunch of tires on gravel seemed muted, as if the world itself had been wrapped in a thick cloth. I glanced into the trees again. A shape appeared, just on the edge of the light. No movement, just standing, watching, waiting, and then it tilted its head toward me. I can't describe why it felt so human and yet not. Something about the way it regarded me, patient, cold, deliberate, made the hairs on my neck stand on end. I pressed the accelerator, desperate to put distance between myself and the forest, but the trees didn't recede. The road didn't open. I was trapped, and I had the distinct sinking feeling that whatever had been scratching my car the night before was still out there waiting for me. The forest, the fog, the endless curves of the road, they were no longer just scenery. They were part of it, part of whatever was following me, and for the first time I understood it didn't want to be seen. It wanted me to notice. I kept my eyes glued to the road, my knuckles white as I gripped the steering wheel. The figure in the trees hadn't moved, but I could feel it, a pressure, a presence pressing in on all sides. Every shadow between the trunks seemed alive, whispering something I couldn't understand. I forced myself to keep driving, though the road twisted like a snake, each curve bringing the same suffocating forest closer, trapping me in a tunnel of dark green and brown. Then I saw it, a car, parked off the shoulder, headlights off. The kind of parked car that doesn't belong there, like it had appeared out of nowhere. The driver's side door was open. I slowed instinctively, curiosity wrestling with terror. There was no one inside. No movement, no figure, nothing but the empty seats. My heart hammered in my chest. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe someone had pulled over last night and left the car there. Maybe it was abandoned. I swallowed hard and passed it slowly, eyes on the mirror. Nothing, then I saw him. From the corner of my eye, at the very edge of the curve up ahead, a man sprinted. Not running casually, but full speed, screaming something that the wind swallowed before it reached me. His hands flailed wildly. I only caught a glimpse in the mirror before I hit the accelerator. Hey, you! Get out of the car, now!" The voice tore through the silence, ragged and desperate. I floored it. Gravel crunched under the tires as I careened around the bend, the engine screaming in protest. My mind raced. Who was he? Why was he chasing me? The road seemed endless, twisting impossibly through the forest. Every shadow between the trees flickered, and I swore I saw shapes moving just beyond the headlights. But when I blinked, they were gone. The man's shouting continued, closer now, echoing in ways that made the forest seem alive. I glanced into the rearview mirror. Nothing, and yet I knew he was there. Every instinct screamed for me to escape, and I obeyed without question. My tires skidded on wet leaves, sending sprays of mud onto the hood, but I didn't care. I just needed distance. I needed safety. Somewhere in the middle of the forest, the road straightened slightly. A faint mist rose from the ground, curling around the tires like it had a life of its own. And then there's the parked car, the one I had just passed, but it wasn't empty anymore. The driver's side door slammed shut on its own, the metal rattling. Headlights flicked on. The engine hummed as if waiting, patient. I slammed my foot down on the brake. Too late. My car slid, spinning slightly before regaining traction. I looked back. Nothing again, but the sound, scratching, faint but deliberate, started at the back of my car and traveled forward. Not fast, not continuous. Just a slow, mocking rhythm. I clenched my jaw and forced myself to keep driving. The bend ahead swallowed the forest into darkness again. I didn't look back. I didn't dare, but I felt it. Something moving with me, something aware. The forest itself seemed to lean in. The trees forming impossible angles. Trunks bending toward the road as if they were closing in. The road curved, twisted, and I knew that no matter how fast I drove, the bend would always be there, and when I rounded it, there he was again, the man, sprinting, screaming, arms outstretched like he wanted to grab me. Only this time, his face was different, blank, expressionless, his eyes black voids that reflected nothing. I screamed. I didn't look back. I didn't want to. I pushed the accelerator to the floor and the tires roared across the asphalt, and then I realized something worse than him, worse than the forest, worse than the scratches on my car. The sound had stopped. The scratches had stopped. The forest had stopped moving. And somewhere deep in my chest, I understood. It wasn't chasing me. It had been waiting. I didn't know how long I'd been driving. Minutes? Hours? The forest had swallowed all sense of time. Each curve, each shadowed stretch of asphalt, blurred together into one endless, suffocating corridor. The scratches on my car had stopped, but that didn't mean I was safe. Something else had taken their place. A presence, a weight that pressed against my mind, an invisible hand on my shoulder, nudging me forward. The forest seemed to breathe in rhythm with my pulse. Every exhale, every heartbeat echoed between the trunks as if mocking me. I tried to turn onto another road, anything that might lead to a town, a gas station, a diner. But every turn brought me back here, to the same bend, the same stretch of road, the same twisting tunnel of trees. It was impossible. My hands shook on the steering wheel. My mouth was dry, tongue sticking to the roof. I told myself I was imagining it. I had to be imagining it. But the forest, the shapes, the soundless movements just at the edge of my vision, they told me otherwise, and then I saw it again. Another car, parked just off the side of the road. Same make, same color. Headlights off! Door slightly ajar, I froze. My pulse slammed in my ears. I didn't dare slow down. I didn't dare look too long. My eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. Nothing. Of course, nothing. And yet, I knew. I pressed the accelerator. The tires shrieked. My own breathing filled the car, ragged and desperate. I rounded another curve, and the figure was there, standing in the middle of the road. Tall, thin, immobile, its head tilted at that impossible angle just like before. My stomach dropped. I slammed on the brakes, but the car slid on wet leaves, barely coming to a stop. The figure didn't move. It just stared, waiting. I didn't think. I didn't reason. I floored it again, tires gripping the slick road just enough to pull me past. And then I saw it in the rearview mirror, another figure crouched low, moving between the trees. Not running, just gliding, following, always following. I couldn't stop. I couldn't slow down. The engine roared, the tires screamed, and I prayed that somewhere ahead, somewhere, there would be a clearing. But the forest never ended. The road twisted, rose, dipped, each turn the same as the last. I screamed, a long, raw sound that tore through the silence. No answer came, just the trees unblinking and unmoving. Then the radio static, then a faint voice. Slow, deliberate, almost mocking. "You can't leave." I slammed on the dial, but the signal was gone. Only static returned. Something struck the car. Light, soft, and like fingertips dragging across the roof. My vision flicked upward. The back seat was empty. I forced myself to keep moving, focus, keep moving. Don't stop, and then a bend ahead. A bend that looked familiar. Too familiar. My car hesitated, tires skidding slightly as I rounded it. There on the shoulder, another car. Headlights blazing, door open. And the man, no, the figure, standing beside it. Arms raised, screaming, or trying to. The sound didn't reach me. My heart seized. I passed nothing. But when I glanced in the mirror, I realized the bend was behind me now. The figure wasn't. It had followed me. I slammed my foot to the floor. My car leapt forward, tires biting into the asphalt as if it were running for its life. The forest blurred around me, and I understood I wasn't escaping. I was moving through its world, not mine. And as long as I stayed on the road, it would be waiting, always at the next bend, always in the shadows, just out of reach. I didn't know if I'd ever leave, but I knew one thing. I couldn't stop. The forest finally began to thin as dawn crept over the horizon, pale and cold. The trees no longer pressed close, and for the first time in hours I thought I might be free. My hands were numb from gripping the wheel, my body trembling from adrenaline and exhaustion. I slowed, my car rolling over the damp leaves and gravel of a side road that seemed vaguely familiar. Ahead, a small clearing opened between the trees, a patch of grass unshaded, bathed in the weak light of morning. I pulled over, heart hammering, and killed the engine. Silence. For the first time I noticed the quiet wasn't comforting. It was empty. Too empty. There were no birds, no rustling of leaves, not even the distant hum of insects. Only the low, persistent hum in my own ears. I got out of the car. The air was cool, wet with dew, smelling of earth and decay. I stumbled to the back of the vehicle, and then I saw it. The marks, the scratches, 4 long, shallow grooves etched into the trunk. Exactly like before. The paint was slightly scuffed, damp from the night's fog, and the lines ended in sharp curves, deliberate, almost methodical. I ran my fingers over them. The metal was cold, unforgiving. There was no explanation. No fallen branch, no animal. Nothing but the car and these impossibly precise scratches. And then I noticed something else, a word. Faint. Written in the layer of dew and dirt on the trunk, "Run!" I stumbled back, tripping over a root. My breath came fast, shallow. The kind that rattles in your chest when panic and exhaustion collide. I wanted to rationalize it. Someone had vandalized my car, played a cruel prank, left a message. But the forest around me, it was empty. There was no road, no sign of another person, nothing that could account for it. I checked the rest of the car. The doors, the roof, the hood, no further marks. Only the back. Only that message. I ran my hands over my face, pressing the cold into my cheeks. I could still feel the weight of last night, the bends in the road, the figure in the trees, the whispering presence that had followed me, and the memory of the man, the one screaming at me, the figure that ran, the impossibly human and yet not human faces. I had escaped the forest, but the forest had left a mark. On my car, on me, on my mind. I sank onto the damp grass beside the car. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold my head. I tried to remember anything that made sense. Sleep deprivation, paranoia, fatigue. Maybe it was all in my mind, but the scratches weren't. The word wasn't. Somewhere inside me, a slow, creeping certainty grew. Whatever had followed me through the night wasn't done. It had left a calling card, a message, and I could feel it, waiting. I didn't move for hours. I just sat there, listening to the faint rustle of leaves in the breeze, the occasional chirp of a bird. Every sound made me jump. Every shadow made my stomach tighten. Finally, as the sun rose higher, I realized I had to leave. The road, any road was no longer safe. I climbed back into the car, fumbling with the ignition. The engine sputtered to life. I glanced once more at the scratches, the word. The cold metal seemed to radiate a silent warning. You cannot stop. I drove off slowly at first, then faster still. The bends came again, the trees leaned closer. But the forest seemed quieter now, watching, waiting. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know if I would ever find safety. But I understood something crucial. Whatever had followed me through the night wasn't human. It didn't tire. It didn't rest. It only waited. And it had learned something about me. I drove in silence, the engine humming like a pulse that matched my own racing heartbeat. The road stretched on, twisting, curving, bending impossibly in ways I didn't remember from the night before. The forest pressed close, the trees long and thin, their shadows stretching toward the car like fingers. The scratches on the trunk and the word "run" haunted me. Every reflection in the windows, every curve of the road felt like another reminder that I wasn't alone. And deep in my gut, I knew the figure from the trees had never stopped following. It hadn't needed to. The forest itself had become a conduit, carrying it, hiding it, letting it study me. I thought about stopping at the next town, somewhere with people, light, life. But every instinct screamed against it. If it could reach me here, what would it do in the open, where other eyes might see and not understand? The bends came again. The road narrowed, and there, at the edge of my headlights, a car. Identical to mine, parked, door open. Engine off, waiting. I didn't hesitate. I swerved to the right, tires crunching on loose gravel, and pressed down hard on the accelerator. The car didn't move. I slammed the brakes. The tires skidded. My chest tightened, my eyes darting to the mirror. Nothing. Then I heard it scratching. Slow, deliberate, tracing the roof of my car. From behind, but not quite. It was inside and out at the same time. My mind screamed that it was impossible, but my senses told me otherwise. I gripped the wheel and whispered almost to myself, "Who are you?" No answer, and then I saw it, or thought I did. The shadow moved in the corner of the windshield. Low, human-shaped but elongated, distorted. Head tilted unnaturally. Fingers too long, eyes black voids that reflected nothing. It ran along the edge of the light, moving faster than should have been possible, gliding alongside the car. I screamed. I swerved. The tires barely held traction as the road twisted ahead. The forest around me seemed to fold in. Branches tapped the windshield. Leaves scraped against the metal. And yet it wasn't the trees. I knew it. A whisper brushed against my ear. "You can't leave." I slammed on the brakes. The car skidded sideways. The shadow ducked under the headlights and vanished. For a moment the world was silent. Then the bends came again. The trees leaned closer. Shapes flickered between them, moving with impossible speed. My reflection in the rearview mirror wasn't mine, at least not entirely. The eyes were wider, the mouth twisted. I realized the truth. It wasn't just following me. It had learned me. My fears, my instincts, my patterns. Every move I made, it anticipated. Every time I thought I escaped, I fell into its design. I didn't know how long I drove. Minutes? Hours? Days? Time had lost meaning in that forest. The road bent endlessly. The same bends repeating, and the car around the bend always appeared. Always waiting. Finally, the forest thinned slightly, and in the distance I thought I saw lights. Human lights, civilization. Hope I slowed. Heart hammering, hands trembling. The scratches, the whispers, the shadows, all seemed to recede. I told myself this was the end, safety, relief. But then, just as the headlights of the town began to glimmer in the fog, I saw the reflection in my rearview mirror. It was still there, standing in the middle of the road, silent, waiting. Head tilted. Eyes black voids, fingers long, impossibly long. And that whisper crawling into my mind, "We meet again." I hit the accelerator. The lights of the town blurred. The road twisted. And I understood fully, finally, there is no escape. The night, the forest, the passenger too, it doesn't end. It only waits. And somewhere deep inside me, I knew it would always be there. The Watcher on the Stoops, Chapter 1. Midnight ride, the streets were dead. Not the kind of quiet where you can hear yourself think. The comforting silence of a sleeping city, but the kind that presses against your ears and makes every little sound echo. My bike tires hummed on the asphalt, the only movement in blocks of empty storefronts, darkened windows and shuttered doors. It was past midnight, and I had ridden with my friend until the end of the night. Now we had parted ways, him heading one direction, me the other, leaving me alone in the dim glow of streetlights that flickered intermittently. The air was warm for a summer night, but not warm enough to be comfortable. There was a hint of dampness, the kind of smell that comes after an afternoon of sporadic rain. I pedaled slowly, more out of habit than necessity, keeping alert as shadows moved strangely along the sidewalks. Construction cones and orange barriers forced me onto the sidewalk. It wasn't ideal. Sidewalks were narrow, rough, uneven, but the streets themselves were empty. I had thought about waiting, maybe going back a block, but the night air carried a faint impatience and I wanted to get home. Just a couple of blocks, that's all. Then I saw him. He was walking toward me alone, mid-40s maybe, scruffy in the way a man who didn't pay much attention to appearances might be scruffy, but not homeless. That was immediately clear. His clothing was ordinary, worn jeans and a t-shirt. Shoes that looked like they'd been cared for despite the worn laces. There was something ordinary about him, too ordinary for the unease that bloomed in my chest. I approached cautiously. The sidewalk narrowed even further at this point, forcing a kind of intimacy I wasn't comfortable with. I didn't want to scare him, but I didn't want to be surprised either. So I called out, trying to sound casual. "Hey, behind you." His head snapped around and I saw it, that look. Anger, surprise, suspicion all rolled into one. His eyes locked onto mine, and it was no friendly glance. There was a sharpness in them, a tension I didn't expect from someone who seemed otherwise unremarkable. I forced a smile, something that might pass for casual, and turned down my street. My heart was already beating faster, and I knew I'd just made a critical mistake. The screaming started immediately behind me. "You fucking cunt! I'm gonna kill you!" The words were guttural, jagged, tearing through the quiet night. My bike wobbled as my adrenaline surged. Every instinct screamed at me to pedal faster, to put distance between myself and the stranger, who seemed to know somehow exactly where I didn't want him to figure out where I lived. Not yet. So I made the first of several loops around the block, hoping to buy myself time, hoping to think. The anger in his voice continued, nearly vibrating the air around me. My lungs burned, legs pumping, sweat rolling down my back. The city felt suddenly alien. Each street lamp flickered as though to highlight the terror in my chest. The buildings leaned in closer, threatening, echoing his voice. I didn't dare glance over my shoulder. Then I saw him, at the edge of the block, moving with a terrifying awareness. He wasn't running chaotically. He wasn't staggering or screaming at the air. He was moving with intent, and he stopped. Just like that, right in front of my house, standing on the stoop. Watching the street, it didn't make sense. I had looped around the block. He shouldn't have been there. I pedaled faster anyway, heart hammering so hard I thought he might hear it. He didn't move. He just stood there, rigid, staring. I didn't stop. I couldn't. I rode back to my friend's place, breathing in ragged gasps, the streets empty, yet filled with a tension I couldn't shake. I sat there for hours afterward, replaying every movement, every sound. I kept thinking I'd imagined it, but deep down I knew I hadn't. A few days later, my bike was gone, stolen from the alley near my house. And that's when I realized it hadn't been a simple encounter. That night, the man hadn't just followed me. He had studied me, known something I didn't even admit to myself. Even now, thinking back, I can feel the weight of those eyes, the intent behind them, and the city, quiet as it was, never felt the same again. The next night, I couldn't stop thinking about him. The memory of those eyes, the way he had paused on my stoop, replayed endlessly in my mind. Every street I rode down seemed suddenly dangerous, every shadow suspect. I told myself it was just one man, a random encounter. But the city had shifted, and I knew it. A few days later, I went for another ride during the day this time, trying to reclaim the streets. It felt safer. Warm sunlight replaced the oppressive shadows, and the hum of traffic and people made the city feel normal again. But as I passed familiar corners, I couldn't help scanning the sidewalks, and then, just briefly, a shadow that lingered too long, too deliberately, at the edge of vision. My pulse spiked. That night, I rode again, late, under the cover of darkness. The streets were quieter now, the hum of the city muted in the late hour. I was alert, every sense heightened. And then I saw him. He wasn't hiding, but he wasn't obvious either. Walking slowly along the sidewalk, hands in his pockets, shoulders hunched slightly. The same scruffy mid-40s appearance, not homeless, not strange in the usual sense, just ordinary. Ordinary and terrifying. I tried to rationalize it. He had probably just been out for a walk. Maybe I had imagined the intensity of his stare the other night. But my instinct screamed otherwise. Something about him was wrong. Something about the way he moved, the slight tilt of his head, the pauses, deliberate pauses, that seemed to track me, made every nerve in my body tighten. I approached cautiously, slowing my bike. The sidewalk narrowed just enough to force proximity. I didn't want to scare him. I didn't want confrontation. I wanted safety. "Hey, behind you," I said again, carefully, trying to sound light. He turned. The look in his eyes was a shock. Anger, yes, but also something colder. Recognition, like he remembered me from before. Like he had been waiting. I pedaled past as quickly as I dared, trying not to draw attention, but he followed. Not immediately, but soon I could hear the shuffle of feet behind me. At first it was faint. Then words emerged, low, venomous, almost rehearsed. "You think you can just ride past me? You little cunt. I'm going to make you regret this." The sidewalk curved. I tried to pass him quickly, but he fell, in line with my pace, keeping distance enough to appear casual, but close enough that I could hear his muttered threats. My stomach churned. My pulse raced. I didn't know what to do. Stop? Confront him? Pedal faster and risk drawing attention to myself? I made a decision I would come to regret. I looped around the block, pretended I was going somewhere else, trying to lose him. My hands were sweaty, my legs tight with tension, but when I glanced back, heart in my throat, he had anticipated it. He was standing on my stoop, my front stoop, watching, silent. I pedaled harder, stomach twisting, trying to convince myself this was coincidence. But it wasn't. He had known where I lived. He had waited. I didn't stop until I reached my friend's place. By the time I slowed, my breath came in jagged bursts, my chest tight. I locked the bike in the alley, tried to shake the image of him from my mind. Tried to convince myself he was just some random man, an unfortunate intersection of paths. But even then, I couldn't forget the way he watched, the stillness, the intent. And deep down, a seed of dread began to grow. I wasn't safe. Not in the streets, not on the sidewalks, not anywhere near my own home. The streets were empty, too empty. Even with the dim glow of streetlights, the city felt abandoned, and every distant sound, the scrape of a trash can, the rattle of a loose sign, made my heart thump in my chest. I had left my friend's place, hoping a short ride might clear my head, but the memory of him lingered, heavy and insistent. I pedaled slowly, trying to convince myself I was imagining it. Maybe he hadn't followed me last time. Maybe the stoop incident was coincidence, maybe. Then I heard it, a shout, "You little cunt! I'm gonna kill you!" The words tore through the quiet night like a knife, slicing the calm I had been trying to hold. I froze mid-pedal, trying to pinpoint where it came from. Behind me, farther down the street. Too close, too real. I spun on my handlebars. He was there, standing in the street, half shrouded in shadow. The same scruffy man, mid-40s, eyes dark and furious. He had appeared out of nowhere, like he was a part of the night itself. I started pedaling faster, legs burning, adrenaline flooding every vein. I wanted to put distance between us to escape. The street curved, and I made a desperate loop, trying to mislead him. But the sound of his voice followed, echoing off the brick walls and shuttered storefronts. "I'm gonna get you! You can't hide!" The words were guttural, almost a chant, primal in their anger. My lungs burned, my heart hammered. I told myself to be rational, to think. But rational thought was impossible in the face of raw, immediate threat. I looked over my shoulder. He was running now. Not stumbling, not shouting with confusion. Running with intent, arms pumping, every step deliberate. And yet, every time I turned a corner, he seemed to anticipate my move. He wasn't just chasing me. He was studying me, predicting me, calculating. I looped around again, desperately hoping to confuse him, hoping to break his line of sight. My neighborhood was familiar. Every stoop, every alley, every street corner memorized over years of daily travel. I thought I could use that to my advantage. But when I glanced down my own street, my blood ran cold. He was there, on my front stoop, watching, waiting, silent. My legs pumped faster. I couldn't stop. I couldn't risk him learning where I lived. My bike wobbled, tires grinding against the asphalt, scraping over loose stones. I dared a glance over my shoulder. He wasn't in pursuit yet, or at least not physically. But the knowledge that he knew where I lived was worse than him running after me. I pedaled until my lungs burned, circling the block one more time, each pass making the night feel tighter, smaller, more suffocating. The shouting continued, sometimes closer, sometimes fading, always present in my mind, echoing even when the street was empty. Finally, I turned into the alley near my friend's house. My chest heaving, hands trembling on the handlebars, I tried to make sense of it. Was it just a coincidence? Some mentally ill man out for a walk? But the intent in his eyes, the precision, the way he appeared on my stoop, it wasn't coincidence. Somewhere inside me, the rational part of my mind whispered, he was watching. He had studied. And this wasn't over. Even as I locked my bike and rushed inside, the echo of his words lingered in my chest, vibrating in my ears. You can't hide. You can't run. I'm coming for you. And deep down I knew he meant it. The city streets at night had changed. They weren't familiar anymore. Every corner, every alley, every streetlight felt loaded with potential danger. Even though I was on a bike, I felt trapped. The narrow sidewalks forced me to stay in predictable paths. The quiet streets offering no cover, no escape. I pedaled cautiously at first, trying to convince myself to slow down, to breathe. to regain some sense of control. But the memory of him on my stoop, waiting, watching, refused to leave me. I couldn't stop, couldn't slow, couldn't think clearly. Then I saw him again, walking, not running this time, calm, methodical. The scruffy man I had hoped to forget. He didn't shout at first. He just moved along the sidewalk, his gaze fixed somewhere in front of him, though I knew he was aware of me. My stomach turned. I tried to mislead him. I made a sudden right turn, weaving through streets I rarely used. My heart pounded, my lungs burned. The loop around the block was a desperate measure, a chance to throw him off, to confuse him, to regain some control over the situation. But he followed. I could hear the shuffle of his feet on the pavement. It wasn't chaotic. It was purposeful. He was pacing me, learning my patterns. Every turn I made, he adjusted seamlessly. It was as if he had anticipated every move I would take before I even thought of it. I pedaled faster. My thighs screamed. My breath came in sharp, shallow gasps. Each loop brought me back to the same street, my stoop, the place I desperately didn't want him to know. And there he was, waiting on my front stoop, like a predator who had marked its territory. Confident that I would return, I almost screamed. I swerved down another side street, zigzagging in a frantic attempt to break his line of sight. My mind raced. If I stopped, he would know where I lived. If I slowed, he would catch me. But every loop I took, I found myself drawn back toward my own neighborhood, as though the streets themselves had become a trap. The city around me seemed to distort. Streetlights flickered. Shadows stretched unnaturally. The familiar streets became alien, corridors of suspense. Each passing window, each closed door, each shuttered storefront felt like it hid eyes watching, waiting. I tried calling my friend, but the phone was dead. No signal, no help. Only the echoing shuffle of his footsteps, faint now but omnipresent. Then I realized something worse than him catching me physically. He knew. Every house I passed, every corner I rounded, every familiar landmark was mapped out in his mind. And somewhere deep in the city, he had already calculated the shortest path to my door. My legs burned, my hands cramped. My mind screamed for a plan. And then I saw the alley behind my house, a narrow passage I had used for years, a place I thought might give me a moment of cover. I darted toward it, hoping for concealment. My pulse rattled in my ears, each beat a drum of impending doom. I rounded the corner. The alley was empty. For a moment, relief surged, and then I glimpsed movement at the far end. He was standing there, calm, silent, watching, not approaching, not fleeing, just waiting. The familiarity of his presence, the certainty, made my blood run cold. I had no choice. I pedaled past, racing blindly down the streets I had memorized for safety. The loops continued, each pass more frantic, more disorienting. The city had become a maze, and he knew it as well as I did. Every streetlight, every shadowed corner, every familiar stoop reminded me he was always watching, always learning, always waiting. I realized in a surge of dread that clawed at my chest that I wasn't losing him. I wasn't escaping. I was running through a city that had become his domain. And the loop wasn't just a strategy. It was a trap. I was trapped. The blocks blurred together as I pedaled, a frantic rhythm that matched the hammering of my heart. Each street I turned onto seemed familiar and alien at the same time. Shadows stretched unnaturally in the dim light, as if the city itself had shifted overnight. Every stoop, every doorway, every narrow alley felt like a trap. I rounded a corner and froze. There he was, on my stoop, standing perfectly still, as if he had been waiting all along. My breath caught in my chest, and my bike wobbled in the momentary paralysis. The man's posture was calm, almost casual, but there was an intensity in his gaze that made my blood run cold. He didn't shout. He didn't move. He simply watched, and I knew without a doubt that he had learned everything. My habits, my roots, my home. Somehow impossibly, he had anticipated my return. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to move. I pedaled faster, desperately avoiding the stoop. My front wheel kissed the curb as I turned sharply onto the next street, heart hammering, legs trembling. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the city had tilted, each turn and corner conspiring against me. I glanced back. He was still there. The stoop was empty, or at least appeared empty. But I knew he was watching. Somewhere in the shadows, beyond the reach of the streetlights, He waited, patient, calculating, silent. I pedaled in tighter loops, trying to mask my house, trying to convince myself he couldn't know the exact location. But deep down, I knew I was wrong. Every loop, every twist of the road, every evasive maneuver had been anticipated. I stopped at a corner behind a row of hedges, catching my breath, trembling violently. The street was quiet again. Too quiet. I couldn't see him, but I could feel him. The weight of awareness, the sharp sense of being studied, every instinct screamed at me to run, to escape, to ride until my legs gave out, until the city opened up into some neutral territory, somewhere that wasn't his domain. But where could I go? He had studied me. He had mapped the city. Every shortcut, every alley, every side street. He knew them all. And then I realized something worse than his presence. The stoops themselves seemed to mock me. Every porch I passed, every step I glimpsed in the shadows reminded me that the city was full of eyes, full of watchers. I wasn't alone. Maybe I never had been. I made the decision to retreat. Slowly, carefully, I pedaled back toward my friend's place, staying in the shadows, avoiding the direct line of sight. My mind raced with scenarios, all horrifying, all possible. The man on the stoop wasn't just following me. He was learning, studying, waiting. Hours later, even when the streets were empty and the city asleep, I couldn't shake the memory. I kept replaying the loops, the stoops, his stillness. Every glance over my shoulder, every quiet sound, felt like he was there somewhere, unseen but near. And deep inside, I knew the truth. My home, the place I thought safe and was no longer mine. 2 days later, the city felt heavier. Shadows clung longer to the corners. Streetlights flickered with a nervous energy, and every familiar stoop seemed to twitch in anticipation. I couldn't shake the memory of him. The man on the stoop, the way he had studied me, the way he had anticipated every movement. I went outside to check the alley behind my house. The narrow space I had used to secure my bike now felt exposed, vulnerable, a trap I hadn't anticipated. The locks were there, yes, but the bike, my bike, was gone. Panic slammed into me like a physical blow. My hands shook, stomach twisting, breath caught in my throat. I ran my fingers over the empty space where it had rested. Nothing. Just the cold asphalt and the shadows stretching unnaturally across the walls. At first, I tried to rationalize it. Stolen by some random thief? Opportunistic, nothing to do with him. But deep down, I knew better. He had watched. He had waited. And now, with the bike gone, the invisible thread of his presence felt more real, more immediate. I replayed the nights, the loops, the stoops, the shadows. Every move I had made, every street I had pedaled down, every evasive maneuver had been observed. He had studied my habits, learned my patterns. And now, the bike gone, it was proof, tangible proof, that the threat had not been imagined. I called my mum, hands trembling, voice cracking. She insisted I not involve the police immediately. "We don't know who it is," she said, "and we don't want to give him any satisfaction." But even as I listened, I realized it was too late. The satisfaction had already been claimed. The intrusion, the terror, the calculated surveillance, it had already happened. That night, sleep was impossible. Every sound, every creak, every distant footstep made my chest tighten. I imagined him walking past the window, crouched behind a bush, watching, waiting. The city had transformed into a predator, and he was its master. I began to notice things I had never seen before. A shadow that lingered too long. A door opening and closing silently. Shapes at the corner of my vision that dissolved when I tried to focus. It wasn't just paranoia. It was awareness. I could feel the watcher in the streets, in the alleys, in the stoops, in every reflection. The next days passed in a blur. I avoided the usual streets, took longer routes, varied my timing, and checked behind me obsessively. But the fear persisted. It wasn't just fear of a man. It was fear of an intelligence, deliberate, patient, and unrelenting. He had entered my life, mapped it, and left his mark. Even in daylight, the city felt different. Every stoop, every shadow, every alley seemed alive with anticipation. I knew, even if I never saw him again, that he could be anywhere, waiting, studying, preparing for the next move. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I realized something terrifyingly simple. It wasn't about the bike. It hadn't been about the bike, it had been about me.